My name is Felice Ross, and I'm a lighting designer in the performing arts. I'd like to share with you my reflections on light. I've been involved in performance lighting since the age of 15. When I was 15, my family moved to a new city, and we went to, the high school that I went to was quite advanced and had probably lighting equipment that was better than some of the off-Broadway theaters. I grew up in New Jersey, near New York. I always loved theater, but never wanted to be on the stage. And when I arrived to this new school, I saw that there was a call for a stage crew. And I thought, oh, that might be interesting. And I went to the meeting, and they said, a girl? And the teacher told me that there was no insurance for females on the stage crew. I'm talking about a long time ago already. And I went to the principal of the school, and he was very good, and he told me that that's nonsense and that I should go back and fight for it. And I went back to the teacher, and he said to me, but everybody else has experience in the theater and you have none. 15-year-old kids. To make a long story short, he made my life hell for the first half of the year, but then he saw that I was serious and made me co-captain of the crew. And I'm sure to this day I'm the only person who went into it professionally. I immediately was drawn to the lighting. And ever since then, that's what I've been doing. I was fortunate that I had a cousin who lived in the village, in the West Village of New York, and was involved with all the bohemia. And she would get me jobs working in running the lights in off-Broadway. So I did that while I was in high school and in university. I've always been very lucky in meeting people and being able to work with very interesting people. I think that anybody who's starting out in any aspect of theater or any profession in general, you have to taste as much as you can. You have to see as much as you can. You have to experience as much as you can in order to find where your interests lie and what you're able to do and what you want to do and how to do it. Afterwards, it's a matter of talent, and it's a matter of luck. It's like, the classic story of A Star is Born, where the lead actress is sick one evening and the understudy goes in and suddenly becomes a star. You never know where you can meet somebody who you're going to click and find that you'll be able to do your art together with them. So you have to try and do as much as possible. I think that I'm a firm believer, as I said before, in doing everything in theater in order to be able to know what you want to do in theater. It's just meeting as many people as you can, seeing as many theater productions as possible, seeing as many museums as possible, getting as much, seeing as many sunsets as you can, just to get the most stimulus that you can. I worked for 7 years for a lighting production company in Israel, and we gave lighting for the Jerusalem Festival, which at that time was an amazing festival that brought the top companies from all over the world. And while I was working there, I worked with a company called Lindsay Kemp, and the lighting designer, John Spradberry, He's my mentor and the greatest influence in my life, as is the whole company. At the time that I met them, they had been working together for 25 years and had created a language. And that's when I discovered that that was the kind of theater that I would like to be involved in, that I would like to find a group of people to create a language in theater. And I was very lucky to meet later in my life Krzysztof Warlikowski and to work with him, which I've been doing since 1998. I've lit more than 50 productions in both theater and opera with him and with the creative team that he works with. The fact that we have been working together for so long, we also work abroad a lot. We travel and work mostly all over Europe, and each time they are there for at least a month and a half, and I usually come for at least 3 weeks to a month. And we basically spend most of our time together, both in work and out of work. We go to eat together. In days off, we'll often rent cars and go out. And it's become a family, my second family. Sometimes I would laugh and say that I spend more time with them than I did with my children. I think that this helped to create what we do on stage. And the fact that we're so much together, the audience experiences a different kind of theater. They don't realize that that's the reason, but our art has evolved through the experiences together as well. Because we work together so long, we've developed, the same way that I saw in Lindsay Kemp, developed a sort of language. It's a Warlikowski language. The Warlikowski gang creates a sort of a theater that is very specific to him. The first production that I lit with Krzysztof Warlikowski in Poland was in 2000. And through him, I met several other directors here in Poland, and I've been fortunate to be able to work with them as well. I've worked with Mariusz Czerliński for many performances in opera, and with Grzegorz Jarzyna and several others. And of course, working with each one is a world in its own, as is with any of the directors that I work with. But I have to say that I've been fortunate that with each of these other directors, usually it's also with a specific team again. I work now with a Hungarian director, Cornel Mondruccio, and Monica Pomale, who's from Riga, the set designer and costume designer. I had met her. Everything is so involved, and it one to the other. I met her 11, 12 years ago when we were both judges at the Prague Quadriennale. I worked with her with Grzegorz, Jarzyna et TR, and afterwards she brought me to work with Cornel on a production, and since then I've worked with at least 6 or 7 productions together as well. Any artist needs to be aware of all the arts. I love going to museums. I love watching films. I read nonstop. Whenever I'm starting a new production, I like to read all of the information. I often ask the dramaturg to feed me any of the work that's influencing the dramaturgy of the play or of the opera or the dance. I like background as much as possible, and I think that this is part of the art of creating the final product. It's based on research of all the parts of the material that we're portraying in the production. I always like to be educated about anything that's connected to what I'm about to light. The position of women in lighting has changed immensely from when I started a long time ago. Although I have to state, and I always have to give credit to the mother of lighting design, who is a woman named Jeannie Rosenthal, who was the first lighting designer in the States. She was the person that that created the term lighting designer. And she worked originally with Martha Graham, and she lit all the musicals in the 50s. And she's really the person that made the profession of lighting design as a profession. But having said that, when I came into this profession, there were not very many women, certainly not as technicians and as lighting designers. There were a few, but not many. And I did find that I had to prove myself doubly over in order to, in the beginning as a lighting designer or as the head of a lighting crew, I had to prove that I knew what I was doing technically, probably more than a man who was new in that position, a male that was in that position. I think probably it was a more difficult road than a male would have had. But I think nowadays it's changed completely. A lot of my crews, when I come to places, there are a lot more females on the crew. There are a lot more female lighting designers in the profession. Certainly not enough in any of the professions or politics. Well, just stick that in. But as in every walk of life now, it's easier for women to break in than before, definitely. And lighting was always, especially the technical side of it, was always thought of as being a male profession. But nowadays, I think that there's much less. It's much more balanced. There's another part of the story, and of course, in particular, being a woman. I have to say that I think that I was able to do both, being a mother and being a lighting designer who travels a lot and worked internationally. When my children were younger, I didn't travel as much, of course, but I do think it's possible to have both. But you need, of course, a partner who's going to help in that direction. And I do think that it's more difficult for a woman than for a man because of the society who believes that, if a man is traveling for work, then yes, he has to do that to support the family. But when a woman's traveling for work and is often also the main supporter financially of the family, then it's saying like, oh, but she's not there to be the mother. And granted, I might have missed some of my children's birthday parties, but I did give them, both of them, a sense of an importance of finding something in life that they want to do. Work is the 90-something% of all of our lives. And there are so many people who are miserable in work and punch a clock every day. And I think that I gave my children the desire to find something that they enjoy doing in their life, because I'm a privileged person who loves her work, and they see that. And each of my children chose professions which are similar in that side. My daughter chose to be a dancer, and my son chose to be a chef. So I think in that way, I was a successful mother in that way. And in other ways, parents are always questioning what they did in their life, where they did well and where they did less well. But I think that it is possible to combine any passionate profession and family life. It's a balance. You have to find the balance, the way to balance your life in any profession, I think. In order to work in any kind of team in any way, you have to have trust. Otherwise, it doesn't work. Trust is one of the basic things of a working situation, any working situation, any life situation. In friendship, you need trust. Also, in order to have friends. I think that in theater also, it's trust and it's respect that everybody has to have for one another in order to make it work. You need to respect the person who's cleaning the stage. I can't work without a clean stage if the stage is supposed to be clean. The person who's cleaning the windows on the set, I have to respect every single job in theater in order to be able to have my work do its best. If there's trust and respect in all along the way, then the final production will work with an audience. I need cooperation in order to be able to feel free to do my art. If I feel threatened, if I feel like somebody's angry with me, I close up. Then I have to work on myself to be able to open. My art is part of my soul. So if I'm showing my soul and I feel like I'm threatened, then I close up and protect myself. Because you're putting yourself out there, it's very easy to be hurt. But you have to find also, once again, it's the balance. Every time that I work on a new production, I have a few days where I think, I'm no good at this, I should stop, it's enough. Every time you have suddenly a few days of doubts whether this is really working still. But at some point, you get the buzz again and you get the thrill of what you're doing, and you can suddenly, turn on a different light and it suddenly changes your whole world. But I think, once again, that's like anything anybody does in life. I don't think that any creative person is creative 24 hours a day for 70, 80 years of their lives. I think that like anything, you have good hair days and you have bad hair days, and you have good lighting days and you have less good lighting days, and the same thing like anything. It's like actors, it's like everything in any kind of art, I think. If I in my life, if I ever thought of changing profession, now I certainly wouldn't, but when I was younger, I was thinking that something similar would be to edit films. It's kind of like the same process as a lighting designer. The same way that I'm thinking of what I want the audience to see, when and how, a film editor is doing that with the way the film editor edits the films, and what the film editor, how he or she chooses to cut in a specific moment, or to combine in a certain moment. It's very similar to lighting design, I think, in a way. Light is all around us, and it's a constant stimulation for me. I live 7 minutes away from a beautiful sea, the Mediterranean Sea, and the sunsets are a huge inspiration for me. The colors are magnificent. The constant change of light. In my apartment, for example, I have east, west, and northern sides. So the light changes all day long. In the morning, I have the sunrise. During the day, I have more of a general light, being that I don't have the south side. And then I have the whole sunset that comes in and changes all the colors in my apartment. I have a light blue wall that changes every hour of the day, the color of it, and it's magic. I have millions of photos of the sea, the way the sea changes, the colors of the sea. And I'm sending, for example, I'm working now on a project with Monica Pomale, and this set designer from Riga. And I send her all the time, we're doing clouds in one of our operas together with Cornel Mandruccio. So I'm constantly sending her photos of different cloud formations and how they're lit and how they're the possibilities. Or another thing, on another opera we're working together, she has a whole rock formation. And in the sea where I go, there are all these rocks. So I'm sending nonstop photos of how the light is hitting the rocks and how the different possibilities, which many of them we might use on stage afterwards. Now I'm going to date myself, because I have to say that I did work before computers. So the biggest change in lighting was when we moved to computer control. Because before that, we had human beings making the changes. So for good and for bad. for example, if I wanted to change from one lighting situation to another situation, and I would tell the lighting board controller, please do that in a 15 counts. If you had a very sensitive lighting board controller, then he or she would go 1 elephant, 2 elephant, 3 elephant, and do it very slowly. But if you had a board operator who wasn't as sensitive, it might be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So on that hand, I'm thankful for computers because it's more constant. You have the same, you press the button, and as long as your lighting board operator hasn't fallen asleep, you have the lighting going exactly as you planned it, and with the change going exactly as you planned it. But going back to the human touch, and going back to my mentor, John Spradberry, John was an amazing light designer who also was the lighting operator for Lindsay Kemp. And to watch him play the light board, was to watch a musician. His whole body would move across the board, and you would feel the way the light would change together with the movement on stage. And there's no machine that can do that. But, as I said, on the other hand, a computer is a constant and does what you want it to do the way that you want it to do it every single time. So I have to say that probably was the biggest, but I'm really dating myself. And then, of course, moving lights pushed us into a whole nother world where you have, the possibilities are endless. Whereas before, I would have to plan exactly before where each light would be, how it was focused, etc. Now we can do almost anything. Whereas before, if a director had a chair in a certain place and then wanted to move it 10 centimeters left, that meant we would have to stop the rehearsal, take out a ladder, go up the ladder, change the chair, the light for the chair, 10 centimeters left. And then 5 minutes later, if he wanted, no, it was much better where it was, and move it back, it meant we had to bring out the ladder and do that again. Nowadays with moving lights, he or she can move it left, right, back, forward, turn it around, move it across stage, and we have the possibility of very quickly changing it. So that's a time saver. We now have more time to do our art, whereas before we would spend a lot more time focusing lights. Nowadays we spend more time creating the picture and focusing while we actually do the lighting and create the light cues. Darkness and shadows are a part of light, and it's the beautiful part of light. I work with shadows all the time. I love shadows. I love to see the colors inside of the shadows. You can't have light without shadows, and you can't have light without darkness. And it's something that I play with all the time. Because you're working so many hours with people, it's in such close cooperation, sometimes it's good just to make a stop, go out and breathe, and see that there's a world outside, which is an important thing too, because we spend so much time inside the theater. So often enough, I come in the morning, and then I leave at night. I haven't even hardly seen the sunshine. I've hardly seen the daylight. I'm a firm believer that you need to take a break. You need to get out of the theater. You need to go eat a good lunch and renew yourself, see that there is a world outside. Another big thing is that, sometimes we can be in the throes of our production, and often enough, one of the directors that I work with will say, "This is a catastrophe." And I have to say, this is not a catastrophe. A catastrophe is an earthquake and millions of people are killed. This is theater. We're not in a life or death situation. So we have to put everything in proportion. it's always interesting to see how actors or dancers work with the light. There are many of them who have an immediate attraction to light and know how to bring out the beauty in the light. And there are some who you can have a beautiful light on and they stand next to it or block the lighting for their partners. It's very interesting to see how actors work with the light, and it's very important. And I try to work with the actors. I try to explain to them how to look for the good points in the light for them, in the beauty in the light. And it doesn't necessarily mean that they have to be lit all the time. There's the beauty of light is that there's shadow as well. And to use the shadow, to use the not direct light is sometimes much more beautiful than using the direct light. And that's the same for set also. I'm thought of as being a lighting designer for set designers and costume designers, because I always try to find the elements in the set and in the costumes to bring them out and to give them their own qualities. So I'm lighting actors, I'm lighting a set, I'm lighting the costumes, I'm lighting music, because often enough the lighting will go together with the music as well. And as I said before, I find that the lighting is the cement. It's what brings all the other elements together. This is an important part of lighting, that it's a supporting actor, but it also helps to bring everything together, the acting, the directing. Of course, the joke is that without lights, we don't see anything.